So you mentioned that you don't let your dogs go very far from you when out for a walk, and
Mhm.
that engagement is something which you've built up. How have you managed to build that up? Because that's a trait which a lot of people will listen to and be like, "Oh, I'd like to have that for my dog."
I call it, what did I use? It's like I can't remember what I called it now, but it's a certain perimeter. So the dogs learn that they can only go to a certain place. So I call it like a check-in game. And basically your dog's just always checking in with you and checking where you are. So when they're puppies in particular, and Lady's probably the best example of this because I taught this to her anyway before I started doing gundog training. And it was just more, she knew her recall, so she'd go to a certain distance and I'd just call her back and give her a treat or give her a ball when she came to me and sort of made a fuss. And that's all it is, really. It's just really repeating that. I think a lot of people struggle with it because they don't want to talk to the dogs on a walk. They don't want to be recalling them every 5 minutes, and they want to have a chat to whoever they've gone on a walk with or sit on their phone. But actually, I talk to my dogs a lot on walks. Like, I call them in quite a lot still. I recall them randomly so that they remember what the recall is. And it's just so that I don't have them running into the woods wherever they want. There's nothing I want less than a dog, as soon as I let it off lead, that runs straight in the woods and flushes whatever it wants. Flushes all the rabbits or the pheasants, whatever's around. I don't really want that. So that's why I teach them a check-in, because I'm scanning the horizon and the environment and they're just turning back to me. And if I can see something like a rabbit dart across, I can call them back into me and just sit, and they'll sit where they are. It takes a long time for them to understand. It does help when you've got other dogs that do it already. So Lady did it already, and that's kind of how Ginger sort of learnt it. River kind of did it. River had a great check-in for a while, but she's just come through her adolescence, so she was being a bit cheeky and going a little bit further than I'd like. But in the last 4 weeks, it's kind of she's understanding where she's meant to be now. And again, it was just going back to basics, calling her in regularly when she'd hit that distance. So it doesn't matter where the distance is. If for example, Joe, you had a certain distance that you'd want your dog to be in, it might be further away than I would want mine, but all you would do would let them run out and call them back in and give them a reward when they come back to you, and then let them go off again. Same way with hunting, it's building that value around you. Another way that you can do it as well, you can call them back in and you can have popped a couple of treats on the floor and ask them to hunt by you. So if you've got a bit of chicken or kibble or whatever it is that they'll eat when they're outside, I did this with Lady a lot as a puppy. I'd call her in, put my hand flat to the ground and say, find it. And she'd find something around me. And that one is probably the best for keeping the dog as close as possible, because they're like, oh, every time I come near you, I find something really great, so I'm going to stay around you. And that's how I teach that. And that's why I like that, because I don't really want them to I don't want them to be naughty, basically, and make mistakes and me tell them off. It makes my life a lot more miserable if I'm constantly telling my dogs off.
How has the evolution of training differed between your three dogs? Obviously, you started with Lady, and she was sort of a trial and error, and she's got there really nicely. Ginger, you sort of took on at 8 months, and then River, you've taken all the experience from the first two and had her from a puppy. What different things have you done with River that you wish you had done with the other two?
I wish I'd started training them to hunt earlier to stay with me more. Um, Not with Lady, to be honest, with Ginger. So out of my three dogs, Ginger's probably my most difficult dog, because she got away with a lot more as she got older. That's not saying she's a bad dog. To most people in the gun dog world, Ginger's an amazing dog. But for me, sometimes her standards slip a little bit, and she gets carried away quite a lot. So Ginger's like a kettle. She can boil over sometimes and just let it take her away. Whereas Lady's a bit more. Lady's a really big mummy's girl, so she doesn't want to go off on her own. She wants me to go with her. She wants me to hold her hand a little bit, which sometimes isn't great either. And some of that comes from me asking for too much engagement from her constantly, getting her to really look at me all the time because that's what I thought I had to do. When in actual fact, I needed her to engage with me and be with me, but that doesn't necessarily mean look at me. So with River, probably the things I've done differently, I've just harnessed her natural instincts straight away. So just really worked on that hunting with her and just made her realise that I am the best person in the world, and you will only get things if you do it through me. She is so naive. She doesn't know anything. She's never even chased a pigeon or a magpie or anything like that, because I've made her so naive that she just thinks a ball and me are the best thing in the whole entire world. So that's probably where my evolution's changed, in that I've kept things very simple with River. Whereas I think when I got Lady, I was overcomplicating everything and trying to move too quick. So with River, it's all been nice and slow. Like some people would say, because River's 15 months now, some people would probably argue that I've gone, like, she's capable of more, and she is. But I also know that River's going to be a really, really great dog, but I don't need to rush that. Like, I don't need to go too slow, but I don't need to absolutely ram it. So she's in a trial by October. I need to make sure that I'm getting absolutely everything perfect, all of her basics perfect. So by the time we're moving to that next stage, is when she gets on game in the next couple of months, that she doesn't need any telling off or any correcting, because everything's been exactly how it should have been. So that's probably where I've been a bit different with River. I've lost my temper a lot less with her as well than I have the cockers. But I don't know whether that's just because she's a Springer, not a cocker. It probably is. Ask me next year when I have another cocker. But yeah, that's probably the difference in my evolution of training. In that, like, I've learned a lot from the other two about myself, and I think as well from the other two, I've learned that I'm not a bad trainer, and I've trained them quite well. So I was like, well, I can do it again. Whereas I think some people, they get a second dog and then doubt whether they can do it. I was like, nope, I've got this. I can do it. I can get as much help as I need. And I'm not going to mess anything up, and it's not the end of the world if I do either.